So the last thing I want to show you here are some simple examples of doing some basic file manipulation. A lot of times in Java, you're going to want to be able to do some things like create a file, delete a file, or move a file. And it is not always straightforward to figure out how to do that, especially things have changed a little bit since Java 7. And I'm going to show you some ways to do this in Java 7 since Java 7 is now released, and it has kind of improved the API a little bit. I don't know if it's really made it a lot simpler, but I'm going to show you how to do this in the Java 7 API. And the basic root of these kind of file operations is this class called path here. And the way that you can create a path, this is very similar to a lot of the functionality I'd seen in C# and .NET, is to use this paths.get. And so paths.get, it kind of gives you the ability to pass in a directory or a string that represents either directory or file, and it'll represent that as a path. And all of these file manipulation operations work on a path. So I've got some code I've already prepared here to save us a little bit of time, since this is some pretty basic code here. And what I want to show you is how to use this and how to use path. So I've created this paths.get for the c/temp/newfile.txt, and this is the file that we're going to use here. And the first thing we're going to look at is how to create a file. So another shortcut for Eclipse here, as you can see, I've got this code commented out. If you highlight code that's commented out and you hit Control-Shift-C, it'll uncomment it. And if you hit Control-Shift-C again, it'll comment it. Really useful for commenting out a block of code quickly. So to create a file, all that we need to do is we can either do it this way that I have here, or what we've already seen before. If you remember in our printer.java, we created some files here. When we did this output page, we used this print writer and it automatically created this file for us. But let's say you just want to create a blank file, basically the equivalent of a touch in Unix. What you can do is you can call files.createFile and you pass in a path. And we had created our path here. So that's the basic way. You just want to create a file in Java. Now with this new Java 7 API, you'll create a path to your file, and then you'll call files.createPath. And of course you need to catch an IO exception here. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens here. You can see that it should have created in our temp directory. And I'll bring up our temp directory. You can see here that we have this new file.txt. There's nothing in it. So let's move on to the next example here. I'll comment this back out, and then let's look at how to delete a file. So to delete a file, it's very similar. Again here, there's two methods that you can call. You can either call files.delete if exists or files.delete. Delete if exists won't throw an exception if the file doesn't exist, which is kind of useful if you just want to use this as a cleanup in case a file exists. Delete it instead of having to check, does the file exist? You can do this all in one call now, which is kind of nice. So again, it just takes a path. Let's go ahead and run this and see delete this file. And you can see that it's no longer in this temp directory. And then the last one that we're going to look at here is moving a file. And you could copy a file almost the exact same way. I'm just choosing move here, but you can basically do a copy by doing files.copy. And for copy or move, what you do is you just pass in the path, and then you have to create another path for the destination. So source and destination. Pretty basic stuff here, but I want to show you it just so you know how to do this. You don't have to go hunting around for how to do these basic file operations in Java, especially since there's two different APIs now, and this is the newer one that you should be using for Java 7. So I'll go ahead and uncomment this creating the file, and then we'll move the file and make sure that works together. So we'll go ahead and run this whole thing. And then when we look in our temp directory, you can see now we have this moved file.txt. So that's it. That's the basic operations here. With the Java 7 API, there's also a few other things you can do that have been added to be able to more easily handle directories, managing directories. You can do a lot of these same operations against directories instead of files now. And this path class is able to let you combine paths together and things like that. A lot of the functionality that you would need on file systems that really didn't exist before in Java. but here's the basics: creating, deleting, and moving files.